Good morning, everybody. Wow, have I had a day so far. Started off normal and soon became not. I woke up around 8:30 and headed to the bathroom for my morning routine. About 20 minutes later, I'm sitting on the toilet and I hear this faint scream, or at least I thought I did. And then probably no less than a minute later, I hear a much louder, much scarier scream. It creeped me out, honestly, but at that moment I was fighting demons and quickly forgot about it. 10 minutes later, I'm putting my contacts in and I start to hear this banging, like bang, 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 over and over and over. And soon I realize it's like right outside my doorway. And then I hear, "Open this door or we will break it down." Stunned, I open my door to the hallway in only my underwear because I was just in the restroom. I had just woken up. And standing there are 4 or 5 heavily armed police officers. Turns out somebody called about the screaming and they thought it was coming from either my apartment or my neighbor's apartment. It wasn't me. They saw I was alone. My neighbor wasn't even home, and she's this sweet, 65-year-old lady. I tried offering any information I could, but there wasn't much I could do besides just kind of quiver in bewilderment. So naturally, I watched them through the peephole until they left for an apartment above mine, which is where I thought the screaming may have come from. But soon they left altogether, and I don't know whatever came of the situation. I hope whoever did scream is okay, though, because that second one was kind of scary. What a morning. Okay, shall we? We have a very exciting update on a decades-long cold case. But first, let's go back to the beginning. This is the disappearance of Morgan Nick. My name is Eli, and this is Murder in the Morning. My sources for today come from a CBS article, Wikipedia, and a few local news stations that I will list down below. Morgan Chantal Nick was born on September 12, 1988 in Germany of all places, but soon her family moved to Ozark, Arkansas, where Morgan and her 2 siblings were raised. Ozark is a smaller city on the border of Oklahoma and Arkansas, nestled on the edge of a beautiful river and the Ozark mountain range. The whole area, to me, is honestly quite reminiscent of the Appalachian mountain range itself. Okay, so baseball. A time-honored American tradition. A true patriotic pastime, or so they say. But for Colleen Nick, baseball embodies the single most traumatic moment in her life. On June 9th of 1995, Colleen and her 6-year-old daughter, Morgan, headed down the road about 30 miles to the nearby town of Alma to watch a family friend's kid play in a Little League baseball game. A number of innings had passed, and soon Morgan grew tired of watching, as would I, and asked her mother if she could join 2 other girls in catching fireflies on top of this small sandy hill nearby. Reluctantly, Colleen agreed. It was getting dark, and she didn't like the prospect of not knowing exactly where her child was or what they were doing, but the girls weren't too far away, and they did remain in a well-lit area of the ballpark. However, just outside of Colleen's view, the 3 children noticed a man leaning against a red pickup truck with a white camper attachment atop the bed of the truck. According to AY magazine, as the baseball game ended around 10:45 p.m., Colleen was momentarily distracted by the cheers from players and spectators. She then turned her attention back to Morgan, but saw only the other 2 children. This is when the first wave of panic washed over her. She asked those girls where her daughter was, and they said the last time they saw her, she was pouring sand out of her shoes near Colleen's car. She rushed to her car, unable to find her there, so they went back up to that sandy hill where they were playing, but Morgan was gone. and so was the man with the red pickup. After searching in a panic and screaming Morgan's name, someone eventually phoned the police and an officer arrived a few minutes later. Quote, Morgan's playmates told investigators about the man with the red truck and described him as being white, approximately 6 feet tall, and 180 pounds. He had black or salt and pepper hair, facial stubble, and a mustache. Guesses about his age ranged from 23 to 38 years old, and a police artist sketched the man, which would be sent to news outlets and law enforcement officials. End quote. And by the next morning, the FBI had officially gotten involved. According to the Morgan Foundation, at the time of her disappearance, Morgan was approximately 4 feet tall, about 55 pounds, blonde hair, blue eyes, and about 5 visible silver caps on her molars. She was last seen wearing a green Girl Scout t-shirt, blue denim shorts, and white tennis shoes. 2 things I noticed about this creepy man who almost certainly kidnapped Morgan. He knew that he was hidden from any concerned parent's point of view. They couldn't see him from where they were sitting. And he was biding his time until one of those girls, or one girl in particular, went off by themselves. This doesn't feel spur of the moment to me. He patiently waited to execute this plan. In the days and weeks that followed, extensive searches were conducted. The FBI set up a tip line, flyers and billboards were set up all over the area. The media ran her story in the news. But no Morgan. Where was Morgan? Or where was this mysterious man with the red pickup truck? Soon, a year had passed, and then another year, and another year. Before long, it had been 5 years since anyone had seen Morgan. Then, in 2000, a man by the name of Billy Jack Lynx was sentenced to prison for the attempted abduction of an 11-year-old girl only 8 miles from where Morgan was taken at that baseball field. Police learned that he had once owned a red pickup truck with that same camper attachment, but he had sold it before investigators could search it. And then, to make matters worse, Billy died that same year in prison before investigators could question him about other missing girls, like Morgan. Even though he was dead, police couldn't shake the feeling that this Billy Jack Lynx had something to do with her disappearance. As time went on, police continued to follow up on any and all leads. On January 15th, 2002, quote, police conducted a dig on a private piece of land in Boonville, Arkansas, after they received a tip that claimed Morgan may have been buried there. This tip was so specific that the police decided to perform a dig. A police dog was also used in the search. However, police ended that investigation the same evening and do not intend to return to the property. End quote. What I love about this case is that, like I said, the community kept calling in tips and the police continued to follow up on every lead. It was just people helping people. Refreshing. According to Wikipedia, then on November 15th of 2010, 8 years later, federal investigators searched a vacant house in Spiro, Oklahoma, or Spiro, S-P-I-R-O, for DNA evidence that could possibly show Morgan had once been in that house. Cadaver dogs alerted investigators to a well on this property, which they said was, quote, the center of the investigation. Sadly, the search again was called off on December 19th after no evidence was found. 2 years later, in 2019, police finally got a legit break in this case. According to THV11, or 11 most likely, THV11.com, detectives with Alma PD began a review into the early stages of this investigation. During this, their attention was once again brought back to Billy Jack Lynx. They were able to locate the truck that Billy Lynx owned in 1995. That same truck that was seen at that ballpark, despite it having been sold multiple times over the years since its ownership. The current owner of the truck did not have any connection to Billy Lynx, and he allowed detectives to conduct an in-depth investigation of the vehicle. Very nice of him. The forensic team that evaluated the truck's findings confirmed that there were clothing fibers that matched the clothing of what Morgan had been wearing when she was taken. I find that amazing. There's evidence in that truck that has remained for 30 years, 3 decades, and they can still test it. But today, in a press conference this morning, the biggest update to date, I suppose, officials announced that they had found hair in Billy's truck, that same red pickup truck he owned in 1995. And this hair belonged to either Colleen Nick or one of her kids. And since the family has stated they never met this Billy man or had ever been in this truck, police are positive that the hair belongs to Morgan, further proving Billy's involvement in Morgan's disappearance. Quote, Alma Police Chief Jeff Pointer finally officially identified Billy Jack Links as the main suspect in Morgan's disappearance. However, what had happened to Morgan after Links took her away from that ballpark, detectives are still looking into, end quote. That is now the burning question. Where is she? We've got our main suspect that hopefully they will officially prove sooner than later. I can only hope investigators have access to all of Billy's properties now. I mean, I'm not sure how that legally works since he's been dead for 24 years, but I'm sure they can get a search warrant. Anyway, they need to find Morgan, right? And that is where the case is at today. We have confirmation of Billy's involvement and one step closer to finding Morgan Nick. What I hadn't mentioned throughout that is the amount of work Morgan's family has done over the years since. They created a foundation in her name. Colleen often speaks to other families going through this same or similar trauma. The family they've stayed strong, and they've been quoted as saying, they won't let that man win. The person who took their daughter will not bring their family down as well, essentially. And that, my friends, is the case of Miss Morgan Nick. Hopefully we'll have more updates to come, and I will try to keep y'all in the loop if anything else does. Thank you all very much for listening in today. If you'd like, I invite you to stick around after the music for a bonus story. Okie dokie. Bye-bye. I don't even know what to say about this. So here you go. Titled, 81-year-old man sentenced to prison for cloning giant Montana mountain king sheep for captive trophy hunting, of CBS News. Quote, an 81-year-old Montana man was sentenced Monday to 6 months in federal prison for illegally using tissue and testicles from large sheep hunted in Central Asia to create hybrid sheep for captive trophy hunting in Texas and Minnesota. Come on, Minnesota. I mean, I expect that from Texas and Montana, but you? U.S. District Court Judge Brian Morris said he struggled to come up with a sentence for Arthur Jack Schubarth of Vaughn, Montana. He said he weighed Schubarth's age and lack of criminal record with a sentence that would deter anyone else from trying to, quote, change the genetic makeup of these creatures. Morris also fined Schubarth $20,000 and ordered him to make a $4,000 payment to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Foundation. Schubarth's attorney, Jason Holden, said cloning the giant, quote, Marco Polo sheep hunted in Kyrgyzstan in 2013 has ruined his client's life, reputation, and family. I think this has broken him, Holden said. In seeking a probationary sentence, Holden argued that Schubarth was a hardworking man who has always cared for animals and did something that no one else could have done in cloning the giant sheep. which he named Montana Mountain King, or MMK. The animal has been confiscated by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services and is being held in an accredited facility until it can be transferred to a zoo. Sarah Brown, an attorney with the U.S. Department of Justice, had asked that Schubarth be sentenced to prison, saying his illegal breeding operation was widespread, involved other states, and endangered the health of other wildlife. The crime involved forethought, was complex, and involved many illegal acts, she said. Quote, Schubarth not only violated federal and state law, but international treaties, and he and others illegally conspired to conceal their actions from authorities. Schubarth owns Sun River Enterprises, LLC, a 215-acre alternative livestock ranch, which buys, sells, and breeds, quote, alternative livestock, such as mountain sheep, mountain goats, and ungulates, primarily for private hunting preserves, where people shoot captive trophy game animals for a fee. Which is just fucky-wucky. He had been in the game farm business since 1987. Schubarth pleaded guilty in March to charges that he and 5 other people conspired to use tissue from a Marco Polo sheep illegally brought into the U.S. to clone that animal, and then to use the clone and its descendants to create a larger hybrid species of sheep that would be more valuable for captive hunting operations. Marco Polo sheep are the largest in the world. They can weigh up to 300 pounds and have curled horns up to 5 feet long. Schubarth sold semen from these MMK along with hybrid sheep to 3 people in Texas, while a Minnesota resident brought 74 sheep to Schubarth's ranch for them to be inseminated at various times during this conspiracy, court records indicate. Schubarth sold 1 direct offspring from MMK for $10,000 and other sheep with lesser MMK genetics for smaller amounts. The total value of animals involved was greater than $250,000, but less than $550,000, prosecutors said. Quote, Schubarth's criminal conduct is not how Montanans treat our wildlife population, U.S. Attorney Jesse Laslovich for the District of Montana said in a statement. Indeed, his actions threaten Montana's native wildlife species for no other reason than he and his co-conspirators wanted to make money. In October of 2019, court records said that Schubarth paid a hunting guide $400 for the testicles of a trophy-sized Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep that had been harvested in Montana and then extracted and sold to semen. Sheep breeds that are not allowed in Montana were then brought into the state as part of the conspiracy, including 43 sheep from Texas, prosecutors said. Defense attorney Holden sought reduced restitution, saying Schubarth fed and cared for the hybrid sheep on his ranch until they could be slaughtered and the meat donated to a food bank. The remaining hybrid sheep with Marco Polo DNA on his ranch must be sent to slaughter by the end of the year, with the meat also being donated. Schubarth was given until December of 2025 to sell his Rocky Mountain bighorn hybrid sheep. The 5 co-conspirators were not named in court records, but Schubarth's plea agreement requires him to fully cooperate with prosecutors and testify if called to do so. The case is still being investigated, and Schubarth, in a letter attached to the sentencing memo, said he becomes extremely passionate about any project he takes on, including his, quote, sheep project, and is ashamed of his actions. Quote, I got my normal mindset clouded by my enthusiasm and looked for any gray area in the law to make the best sheep I could for this sheep industry, he wrote. My family has never been broke, but we are now, end quote. He was definitely having sex with those sheep, right? I mean, nobody likes sheep that much. Bad boy. Naughty little bastard. Welp, if that's not the note to end on, I don't know what is. I appreciate y'all sticking around to the very end. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you next week. Okie dokie. Bye-bye.
Love you.